Hey, it's Patrick from JP Cycles, and I'm gonna show you how to put this bitchin' stainless 2-in-1 system from Vance and Hines on your Milwaukee 8 Softail. This is a 2019 Fat Bob, but for most Milwaukee 8 Softails, this install is gonna be very, very similar. The only caveat is if you have a mid-control bike as opposed to our forward control bike, you will have to space out the mids, but don't worry, Vance and Hines has you covered with the spacers and the hardware to do that. It's just a slight difference. All right, let's get to work. This front Allen up here may be a little more difficult. You might have to use a ball Allen to get in there and break it loose. So a nice little trick, you can stick this in there, just take a crescent wrench, put it down on there, and that's gonna give us some leverage to break those Allen bolts loose. Might have to give these a little wiggle. Okay, before we take the header off, we need to unplug our O2 sensors, which we are going to reuse. The rear one is plugged in right here behind the first bend here, and the front one is plugged in right here by the voltage regulator. Okay, now that we have the header off, we need to scavenge a few pieces off of it. We're gonna take out our O2 sensors and we're gonna reuse them in our new exhaust. We're also going to use our exhaust flanges and the clips holding them on. If you have a pair of snap ring pliers, you can get those off. Otherwise, a good old fashioned flat bladed screwdriver, trying to stab yourself in the hand. So we're gonna use a 14mm wrench and just pull these O2 sensors out. Okay, so now we're gonna take a 5/16 Allen and take our exhaust mounting bracket off there. Okay, so now we have to take some of the parts we scavenged off of our stock pipe, the O2 sensors, and the exhaust flanges, put them onto our new header pipes before we can mount up our exhaust. Now, the bungs in the exhaust, you can use a wideband 18mm bung, but if you're gonna reuse your stock O2 sensors, they send you little bushings. So you can put anti-seize on these. I'm not a huge anti-seize guy, and also I'm eventually gonna swap these O2 sensors out for some widebands to run our Fuel Pack Pro kit on. But for right now, we're gonna put the stock narrow bands back in there, so we're gonna need a 3/4 wrench to put the little bushing in. We need a 14mm wrench to put the O2 sensor in. So, let's put them in. now we're gonna put our exhaust flange on. We're gonna put this smooth side going down the pipe in this little cutout area here. It's gonna face up, and we're gonna push our snap ring over the top. You can use a set of big snap ring pliers, use a screwdriver. Be careful not to stab yourself in the hand, but most of the time I just kind of muscle them over the top. Okay, the next thing we need to do is swap out our exhaust gaskets, get some fresh ones in there. Some people don't do that, and you could maybe get away with it, but if you do all this work and you have an exhaust leak, you're gonna be bummed out. So I'm gonna pull the old ones out. We're gonna stick some new ones in. Okay, so now we have to put our exhaust bracket on here. If you have a passenger peg, which we don't, you may have to move it up to this location, which isn't a big deal. But we're gonna put this bracket on right here. They give you some really fancy 12-point hardware. We're gonna throw some blue Loctite on there. We're gonna torque these to 30 foot-pounds.
Sexy, 12-point hardware. That's some hot rod stuff right there.
We're gonna start by putting our front header on, and we're just going to hand tight the mounting bolts up there. Same with the rear header. We're gonna put it on. We're just gonna put the nuts on finger tight before we go get our muffler assembly. I don't think so. I try again. Okay, now we're gonna put the muffler on. We're gonna slide this onto the two headers that are loose, and then we're gonna move it forward until it lines up with our bracket. Then we'll slide our dog bone into our bracket and run these bolts through the back here. You can put a little bit of Loctite on there. They are locking bolts, so you really don't need it, but we're not gonna tighten them up just yet. After we get this on there and get the bolt started, we're gonna go back, tighten the front header and the rear header. Now the torque spec is only about 6 pounds on those. I like to do them by hand, just kind of feel them, but get them good and snug. After you get those tight, we're gonna come back to here and we're gonna tighten these up to 15 foot-pounds.
Okay, dog bone time.
So now we're gonna put our springs on that hold our collector to our headers. Vance and Hines sends this trick little tool, makes them easy to pull. Before we do that, you just want to check your gap with your cam cover and make sure that's not leaning up against there. If it is, you can kind of twist this over pretty easily before you put these springs on. I will say, if you have mid controls, you're gonna need to space them out. Ours is obviously forward controls. If you have mid-mount controls, in the instructions it shows you how to space them out. Comes with spacers and hardware, no problem. So we're gonna put our springs on, we're gonna plug our O2 sensors back in, and before we start this bike up, we have to make sure we really wipe this down good. This is a stainless system, it's gonna show all your little fingerprints, and if you heat it up with those fingerprints on there, they're gonna be burned in there forever. It's the easiest it's ever been. And that thing sounds as good as it looks. And we do recommend a tuner. We actually have an FP3 on this bike already. If you're ever changing anything like intake or exhaust, that's always a great option. Now, if you have any questions, you can always feel free to drop us a comment and go work on those motorcycles.